So, do you know what the bias cut was? Well, this lady called Madame Madeleine Vionnet, 1876 to 1975, was a French fashion designer famous for creating the bias cut look. She initially had worked in London and trained in several fashion houses there, also in Paris for a few years. She founded her own fashion house in Paris in 1912 and called it Vionnet. Unfortunately, it had to close in 1914 due to the First World War. But in 1923 she re-established it and it became known as the Temple of Fashion. In 1925 she expanded, opening another Vionnet in New York City. And her fashion house gained popularity for designs that were sold off the peg. In 1920s she developed a style of clothing utilising the bias cut pieces of fabric. This is a technique using the bias cut cloth on the diagonal rather than the warp and the weft straight grain. This enabled delicate materials like crepe de chine and silk, satin materials and chiffon, designed to stretch and cling to the shape of the body. Now, Madame Vionnet had not actually invented the method of the cutting on the bias. In fact, this practice goes way back to the medieval period and before, when the hose for men's stockings were cut on the bias for stretch and comfort. But she had been the first designer to utilise the bias cut for the whole garment. And her style of clothing became so popular that it little changed over her career, and it was popular in the very 1930s. Her bias cut styles took her to the top of the fashion world, and Hollywood stars like Jean Harlow, Katharine Hepburn, Greta Garbo and Joan Crawford loved to wear her fashions. Unfortunately, again, she had to close her London and Paris fashion houses because of the Second World War, and she did retire in 1940. She had designed clothes unique to the 1930s to accentuate the female figure, achieving this with the beautiful bias cut dress. Here she is in her retirement, Madame Vionnet, the bias cut fashion leader. Hope you've enjoyed another historical fashion story. If you have, do join me again next time. Until then, bye.